There's a feeling you've been carrying, and no one else can see it. Your life looks normal, maybe even good. You're doing what you're supposed to do. You're moving forward. You're handling everything. But inside, something doesn't fully sit right. Not in a dramatic way, just a quiet, constant sense that something is off. Like you're living your life, but not really in it. Like everything around you is real, but your connection to it feels slightly distant. And no matter how much you try to ignore it, it doesn't go away. You've told yourself it's nothing, that you're just thinking too much, that maybe this is just how life feels sometimes. So you keep going. You keep performing. You keep acting like everything is fine, even when something inside you knows it isn't. And that's the part no one talks about. That silent moment when you're alone, and you feel it clearly. That gap, that disconnect, that quiet question. Why doesn't this feel real, even when everything looks right? The Vedas say this isn't confusion. It's not weakness. It's not something you need to fix. It's the beginning of awareness. The moment where something inside you starts to wake up and see through the surface of your life. And once that begins, you can't unsee it, because you're not broken. You're not lost. You're just starting to realize that the life you've been living is not the full truth of who you are. And what you're about to understand will change the way you see everything. Your life looks right, but it isn't real. Your life can appear perfectly fine on the outside and still feel deeply off on the inside. You can follow the right steps, make the right choices, and still feel like something is missing. That's because what looks right is not always what is real. From the outside, everything may seem in place. Your routine works, your responsibilities are handled, your life moves forward without obvious problems. People might even look at you and think you're doing well, and in many ways, you are. But there's a quiet space inside you that doesn't agree. A subtle feeling that something isn't aligning, not loudly, not dramatically, just a soft, constant sense that something is not fully right. And the confusing part is, you can't point to anything specific that's wrong. The Vedas explain that most people live on the surface of life. They build routines, roles, and identities that seem correct. But these are only outer layers. These layers are shaped by habit, by expectation, by what the world has taught you to be. You wake up and step into a role. You speak in a certain way. You react in familiar patterns. You move through your day almost automatically. And because everything flows smoothly, you assume this must be what life is supposed to feel like. But smooth is not the same as true. These outer layers are not false in the sense that they don't exist. They are real experiences, but they are not the full truth of who you are. They are only what has been built on top of something deeper. And when you live only through these layers, something inside you begins to fade. You may not notice it at first. It doesn't disappear all at once. It slowly becomes quieter. Your natural clarity, your sense of connection, your feeling of being fully present, it all becomes distant. And in its place, a subtle emptiness begins to grow. Not an obvious emptiness, not something that stops your life, just a quiet absence of something you can't fully name. That's why even a stable life can feel empty, because deep down, there is a part of you that knows there is more than what you are experiencing. A part of you that can sense the difference between living on the surface and living in truth. The Vedas point to this directly. They say the human experience becomes confusing when we mistake the surface for the whole. When we believe that what we do, what we think, and how we appear is all that we are. But something in you resists that idea. That resistance is not a flaw. It's not overthinking. It's not dissatisfaction without reason. It is awareness. It is the part of you that is not fully convinced by the life you are living, the part that quietly watches everything and feels the gap between what is happening and what is real. That quiet discomfort you feel is not confusion. It is not something broken inside you. It is awareness, noticing the difference between appearance and reality. And the moment you stop ignoring that feeling and start listening to it, you begin to step out of the surface and into something deeper, something more real than anything you have known before. You were taught to perform life, not to experience it. From the moment you began to understand the world, you were slowly taught how to live, but not how to feel life deeply. You were shown what is right and what is wrong. You were guided on how to speak, how to behave, how to respond in different situations. You learned how to be accepted, how to avoid rejection, how to move in a way that fits the world around you. And, without even realizing it, you started becoming a performer. Not in a dramatic way, not consciously, but quietly, naturally. You began adjusting yourself to match what was expected. You learned when to smile, even when you didn't feel like it. You learned how to hide confusion, how to suppress certain emotions, how to present yourself in a way that makes sense to others. Over time, this became normal. You stopped noticing it, because everyone around you was doing the same thing. The Vedas explain that this is how most people begin to lose touch with their true experience of life, not because they are doing something wrong, but because they are only taught one side of living, the outer side, the side that deals with actions, roles, responsibilities, and outcomes. But no one really teaches you how to sit quietly with yourself without distraction. No one shows you how to observe your thoughts without reacting to them. No one explains how to experience a moment without trying to change it. So your entire life becomes focused on doing the next task, saying the right thing, becoming something more, fixing something that feels incomplete. And slowly, you become very good at it. You become efficient, you become responsible, you become capable, but at the same time, something else begins to fade. Your direct experience of life. Moments start passing without you fully feeling them. Conversations happen, but you are not completely present. Even joy feels slightly distant, like you are watching it instead of living it. Because when you are always performing, you are never fully there. You are thinking about how you appear, how you should respond, what comes next. And this creates a quiet separation between you and your own life. The Vedas point to this separation as one of the deepest causes of inner discomfort. Not because your life is wrong, but because you are not fully experiencing it. You are moving through it like a role instead of living it as a reality. And that is why, even in calm moments, something still feels missing. Because performing life can give you structure, but it cannot give you presence. It can make things look complete, but it cannot make them feel real. True experience begins when the performance slows down. When you are no longer trying to be something and you start noticing what already is. When you allow yourself to sit in a moment without needing to change it. When you listen, not to respond, but to understand. When you feel, without immediately trying to control or explain. At first, this feels unfamiliar, because you have spent so much time doing. But slowly, something begins to return. A quiet sense of connection, a deeper awareness, a feeling that you are finally here, not just moving through life, but actually touching it. And in that space, you begin to realize something very simple, but very powerful. You were never meant to only perform life. You were meant to experience it fully. And the moment you begin to shift from performing to simply being, life starts to feel real again. Your mind built a life that feels safe, not true. Your mind is not your enemy, but it is not designed to show you the truth. It is designed to keep you safe. From the beginning, your mind has been collecting information, learning patterns, and building ways to protect you. Every experience you've had, every reaction you've repeated, every situation you've avoided, it all becomes part of a system built for comfort. A system built to reduce uncertainty, a system built to keep things familiar, and over time, this system begins to shape your entire life. The decisions you make, the paths you follow, the way you think, the way you react, all of it is influenced by what your mind believes is safe, not what is true. Safe choices feel right because they are familiar. They don't challenge you too deeply. They don't force you to question everything. They allow you to continue without disruption. But truth doesn't always feel safe. Truth can feel unfamiliar. It can feel uncomfortable. It can quietly challenge everything you've been living. That's why the mind avoids it. The Vedas explain that the mind repeats what it knows. It stays within patterns that have already been formed. It prefers continuity over clarity. So instead of asking, "Is this true?" the mind asks, "Does this feel safe?" And that one shift changes everything. Because you can build an entire life around what feels safe and still feel something is off. You can choose the predictable path, the acceptable role, the stable routine, and still carry a quiet sense that something isn't fully right. Not because your life is wrong, but because it is not aligned with something deeper within you. The mind builds structures that protect you from discomfort. It keeps you within boundaries that feel manageable. It avoids anything that might disturb your sense of control. But in doing that, it also limits your ability to see clearly. It keeps you moving within a version of life that feels controlled, but not fully real. That's why, even when everything is going smoothly, there is still a subtle tension inside you. A quiet sense that you are following something, but not fully understanding it. Because deep down, you can feel that your life has been shaped more by avoidance than by truth. The Vedas point to this as a central illusion. You believe you are choosing freely, but most of your choices are guided by patterns your mind has already decided are safe. And when your life is built on safety instead of truth, it may protect you from discomfort, but it also keeps you from clarity. This doesn't mean you need to reject everything your mind has built. It means you need to begin seeing it. Seeing how your thoughts move, seeing how your decisions form, seeing how often you choose what is familiar over what is real. Because the moment you start observing the mind, its control begins to weaken. You begin to notice the difference between what feels safe and what feels true. And that awareness creates space. Space to question, space to pause, space to step out of patterns you didn't even know you were repeating. At first, this can feel uncomfortable because you are no longer moving automatically. You are no longer following the same invisible rules. But slowly, something begins to shift. You start to feel more present, more aware, more connected to what is actually happening instead of what your mind is projecting. And in that space, you begin to understand something deeply important. Your mind built a life that keeps you safe, but your awareness is what allows you to see what is real. And the moment you stop blindly following safety and start gently moving toward truth, life begins to open in a way it never has before. You became who you had to be, not who you are. There was never a single moment where you decided to stop being yourself. It didn't happen suddenly. It didn't feel like a choice. It happened slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. As you moved through life, you began to notice what was accepted and what was not. You learned which parts of you were welcomed and which parts created discomfort in others. You saw what brought approval and what led to silence, distance, or rejection. So you adjusted, not because you wanted to become someone else, but because you needed to belong. You needed to feel safe, understood, and accepted in the world around you. And that is how it began. You softened certain parts of yourself. You hid certain thoughts. You changed the way you expressed your emotions. You became more careful, more controlled, more shaped by what the situation required. Over time, this stopped feeling like adjustment. It started feeling like identity. The Vedas explain that this is how a constructed self is formed, not as a lie, but as a response to the environment, to expectations, to experiences that slowly guide you into becoming a version of yourself that can survive and function in the world. You became who you had to be. The responsible one, the calm one, the strong one, the agreeable one, the one who doesn't cause problems, the one who holds everything together. And in many ways, this version of you works. It helps you move forward. It helps you manage life. It helps you fit into the world without friction. But deep inside, there is a quiet feeling that this is not the full truth, because the version of you that the world sees is shaped, it is built, it is influenced by everything you've been through, and what is built is not the same as what is real. The Vedas point to something deeper than identity. They speak of a self that exists before all roles, before all conditioning, before all adaptation, a self that is not trying to become anything, a self that simply is. But when you spend your life living as the version you had to become, you lose connection with that deeper self. You start to believe that this constructed identity is all you are, and that belief creates a subtle tension, because something within you knows that there is more. You may not be able to explain it clearly, you may not even fully understand it, but you can feel it, a quiet sense that you are playing a role, even when no one is watching. A feeling that you are carrying something, even when everything seems fine. This is not confusion. This is recognition. Recognition that what you have become is not the complete truth of what you are. And the moment you begin to see this, something important happens. You stop trying so hard to maintain the image. You stop forcing yourself to always be the same version. You begin to notice how often you adjust, how often you react based on expectation, how often you move out of habit instead of awareness. At first, this can feel uncomfortable, because the identity you've built has been your way of navigating the world. Letting go of it, even slightly, feels uncertain. But slowly, something begins to open, a sense of lightness, a feeling of space, a quiet return to something more natural, more real. You don't need to destroy the identity you've built. You simply need to stop believing that it is all you are. Because beyond everything you had to become, there is something unchanged, something that was never shaped by expectation, something that has been quietly present the entire time. And the more you begin to notice it, the less you feel the need to hold on to what you had to be. And in that shift, you don't lose yourself. You begin to find what was always there. That quiet feeling isn't random. It's awakening. That feeling you keep noticing, the one you can't fully explain, is not a mistake. It's not something wrong with you. It's not weakness, and it's not overthinking. It's something much deeper than that. It's the beginning of awakening. At first, it doesn't feel powerful. It doesn't arrive with clarity or answers. It doesn't feel like a breakthrough. It feels subtle, almost easy to ignore. It shows up as a quiet discomfort, a sense that something isn't fully right, even when everything looks fine, a strange distance between you and your own life, a feeling that you're present but not completely connected. You might try to dismiss it. You might tell yourself you're just tired, or thinking too much, or expecting too much from life. But no matter how you explain it away, it stays. The Vedas describe this as the moment awareness begins to turn inward, not outward toward the world, not toward achievement or identity, but inward toward truth. And when that shift begins, life starts to feel different. Things that once felt normal begin to feel slightly off. Conversations feel empty in a way you didn't notice before. Routines feel mechanical. Even moments of happiness carry a quiet question underneath them. Not because life has lost its value, but because you are starting to see beyond its surface. This is not confusion. This is clarity beginning to emerge. But clarity at this stage doesn't feel comfortable, because it starts to expose the gap between what you've been living and what is actually real. That's why the feeling is quiet. It doesn't force you. It doesn't push you suddenly. It waits. It stays in the background, gently reminding you that something deeper is asking for your attention. And the more you ignore it, the more distant you feel. The more you listen to it, the more things begin to shift. The Vedas say, awakening does not begin with answers. It begins with discomfort, with a subtle disturbance that cannot be solved through the same patterns you've always used. Because this feeling is not asking you to fix your life. It's asking you to see it, to question what you've accepted without awareness, to notice how you move, how you think, how you respond, to begin observing instead of reacting. At first, this can feel unsettling, because everything you once relied on starts to feel uncertain. The identity you carried, the patterns you trusted, the beliefs you held, they all begin to loosen. And in that space, you may feel lost. But that lost feeling is not failure. It's the space between illusion and truth. It's where the old way of seeing begins to fade, and a new clarity slowly takes its place. Awakening is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is quiet. It is slow. It is steady. It is the moment you realize that something about your life is not fully real, and instead of turning away, you begin to look closer. And once that begins, it doesn't stop. You may try to go back to how things were. You may try to ignore what you're noticing. You may try to return to comfort. But something in you has already seen too much. The awareness has already opened, and even if it's just a small opening,
it changes everything, because now you can feel the difference between distraction and presence, between routine and awareness, between living on the surface and touching something deeper. That quiet feeling is not random. It is the beginning of seeing, and the more you allow it, the more you sit with it, the more you trust it without needing to control it, the clearer everything becomes. Not all at once, but slowly, naturally, in a way that feels real. And one day you realize that the feeling you once thought was a problem was actually the doorway to understanding, the doorway to truth, the doorway back to yourself. You're not living, you're repeating patterns. If you slow down for a moment and look closely at your life, you'll begin to notice something subtle but powerful. Your days are not as new as they seem. They feel different on the surface, but underneath they follow the same invisible lines. You wake up in a similar state of mind. You think in familiar ways. You react to situations almost automatically. The same emotions rise, the same habits repeat, the same inner dialogue continues. Feels like movement, but it's actually repetition. The Vedas explain that most people are not truly living in the present moment. They are moving through patterns stored in the mind. Patterns formed by past experiences, memories, fears, and learned behaviors. These patterns don't ask for your permission. They run quietly in the background, shaping how you see the world and how you respond to it. And because they are familiar, you don't question them. You assume this is just who you are. But if you look deeper, you'll begin to see something important. Your reactions are predictable. Your thoughts follow the same loops. Your emotional responses rise and fall in similar ways, even in completely different situations. That means something is repeating, and repetition is not the same as living. Real living has freshness. It has awareness. It has a sense of presence that is not tied to the past. But when you are caught in patterns, that freshness disappears. You are not responding to the moment as it is. You are responding to it as you've always known it. That's why life can feel stuck, even when things are changing, because internally the same cycles are playing again and again. You might change your environment, your routine, even the people around you, but if the patterns remain the same, the experience feels the same. The Vedas describe this as a kind of unconscious movement. You believe you are choosing, but in reality, your patterns are choosing for you. You believe you are reacting to the present, but you are actually reacting from the past. And this creates a quiet sense of limitation. because no matter what you do, you feel like you are moving in circles. This is why that feeling of something is off becomes stronger over time, because deep inside you can sense that you are not fully free, not in your actions, not in your thoughts, not in your responses. You are following something, but you don't fully see it. At first, this realization can feel uncomfortable, because it challenges the idea that you are fully in control. But this is also where something powerful begins. The moment you start noticing your patterns, you step outside of them. Not completely, not instantly, but enough to create space. You begin to see how a thought forms before you believe it. You notice how an emotion rises before it takes over. You recognize how a reaction starts before it fully happens. And in that moment of noticing, something changes. You are no longer fully inside the pattern. You are aware of it. And awareness breaks repetition, not by force, not by control, but by clarity. The more you observe your patterns without judging them, without trying to fix them immediately, the weaker they become, because patterns survive on unconscious movement. They need you to follow them without seeing them. The moment you see them clearly, they lose their grip, and slowly, something new begins to appear. A sense of space between you and your reactions. A moment of choice where there used to be automatic behavior. A feeling of presence where there used to be repetition. This is where real living begins. Not when your life changes on the outside, but when your inner movement is no longer controlled by the past. And in that space, life starts to feel different. Not because it has become perfect, but because it has become real. And for the first time, you are not just repeating life, you are actually living it. The you believe in was constructed. For most of your life, you've carried a clear sense of who you are. You have a name, a personality, a history. You describe yourself in certain ways. You say, "This is me," and it feels solid, familiar, unquestionable. But if you slow down and look closely, something surprising begins to appear. That you believe in was built, not all at once, not deliberately, but slowly, piece by piece, through everything you've experienced. Your thoughts were shaped by what you were taught. Your beliefs were influenced by what you saw and heard. Your reactions were formed through moments that left an impression on you. Every compliment you received, every criticism you felt, every situation you adapted to, it all added something to this identity you now call me. And over time, it became so complete that you stopped questioning it. The Vedas explain that this identity is not false in the sense that it doesn't exist. It does exist. You can see it, feel it, express it, but it is constructed. It is made up of memory, conditioning, and repeated patterns. It is not something you were born with in its current form. And anything that is built can change. That means the you believe in is not fixed. It shifts depending on where you are, who you're with, what you're feeling. In one moment, you are calm. In another, you are reactive. In one situation, you feel confident. In another, uncertain. So which one is the real you? The Vedas point to this question very directly. They say the identity you carry is like a mask that has been worn for so long, it begins to feel like your face. But a mask, no matter how familiar, is still something you put on. And when your entire life is built around this constructed identity, something begins to feel unstable. Because deep inside, there is a quiet awareness that does not change. An awareness that watches your thoughts come and go, that notices your emotions rise and fall, that sees your personality shift in different situations. That awareness is always there, but it is often ignored because your attention is fully absorbed in the identity. You believe you are your thoughts, your story, your past. But the Vedas gently point out, you are the one noticing all of that. And the moment you begin to see this, something begins to loosen. You start to notice that your thoughts are not always under your control. They appear, they move, they disappear. Your emotions come and go without asking you. Your reactions happen before you fully choose them. So if all of this is constantly changing, how can it be who you truly are? This realization can feel unsettling at first. because the identity you've built has been your anchor. It has given you a sense of certainty, a way to understand yourself. Letting go of that certainty, even slightly, can feel like losing something. But in reality, you are not losing anything real. You are simply seeing what was never permanent to begin with. And in that seeing, something deeper begins to appear. A sense of space. A quiet presence that is not trying to define itself. A feeling of being without needing to become something. You don't have to destroy the identity you've built. You don't have to reject your personality, your story, or your experiences. You simply need to stop believing that they are all you are. Because beyond everything that has been constructed, there is something that has never changed. Something that has been quietly present through every phase of your life. And the more you begin to notice that, the less attached you feel to the identity you once held so tightly. And in that space, you don't become someone new. You begin to return to what was always there. Something simple, something real, something that doesn't need to be built because it already exists. You keep trying to fix what needs to be seen. When something feels wrong inside you, your first instinct is to fix it. You try to improve your routine, change your habits, think more positively, distract yourself, or push the feeling away. You look for solutions, methods, and ways to make the discomfort disappear. And for a moment, it seems to work. You feel a little better, a little more in control, a little more stable. But then, quietly, the feeling returns, because what you are trying to fix was never the real problem. The Vedas explain that this inner discomfort is not something broken inside you. It is not something that needs to be repaired or removed. It is something that needs to be seen. But the mind doesn't understand this. The mind is trained to solve problems, to eliminate discomfort, to move away from anything that feels uncertain or unsettling. So instead of looking at the feeling directly, it tries to escape it, tells you to stay busy, to stay distracted, to stay occupied with something else. Because if you stop, if you become still, that feeling becomes clearer. And clarity is what the mind quietly avoids. So you keep moving, you keep adjusting your life on the outside, hoping something will finally feel right on the inside. But the more you try to fix it externally, the more you miss what is happening internally. That quiet discomfort is not asking for change. It is asking for attention. It is asking you to pause, to stop trying to solve it for a moment and simply observe it. At first, this feels uncomfortable because you are not doing anything. You are not fixing, not controlling, not escaping. You are just there with the feeling. And in that stillness, something begins to happen. You start to notice it more clearly. You notice how it rises, where it sits in your body, how your thoughts react to it, how quickly your mind tries to label it or push it away. You begin to see the entire movement of it. And the more you see it, the less power it has, because the feeling was never the problem. Your reaction to it was. The Vedas point to this very simply. They say that suffering continues when you resist what you don't understand. But the moment you see it clearly, without resistance, without judgment, it begins to dissolve on its own. Not instantly, not forcefully, but naturally, because awareness brings clarity, and clarity removes confusion. The feeling you've been trying to fix is not there to stay forever. It is there to show you something about how you think, something about how you live, something about how you see yourself and the world around you. And once that is seen, the need to fix it disappears, because understanding replaces struggle. You no longer feel like you are fighting something inside you. You feel like you are finally seeing it. And in that seeing, a quiet peace begins to emerge, not because everything has been solved, but because nothing is being avoided anymore. You are no longer running from the feeling. You are no longer trying to control it. You are simply aware of it. And that awareness changes everything. Because the moment you stop trying to fix what needs to be seen, you begin to understand it. And the moment you truly understand it, it no longer controls you. Control feels like power, but it's the trap. There is a belief you've carried for a long time, even if you've never said it out loud. that if you can just control your life better, everything will finally feel right. If you think more carefully, plan more clearly, manage your emotions, fix your habits, avoid mistakes, then slowly, everything will fall into place. And for a while, this belief seems to work. Control gives you structure. It gives you direction. It gives you the feeling that you are in charge. It makes life feel organized, predictable, manageable. But beneath that sense of control, something else is quietly growing. Tension. Because control is not as stable as it feels. The Vedas explain that what you are trying to control is already shaped by forces you did not create. Your thoughts, your reactions, your fears, your habits, they are all influenced by patterns that have been built over time. So when you try to control everything, you are actually trying to control something that is already moving on its own. And that creates conflict. You begin to fight your own thoughts. You resist your own emotions. You try to force yourself into a version of life that feels right, even when something inside you doesn't agree. And the more you try to control, the more effort it takes. You start watching yourself constantly. You start correcting every reaction. You start trying to stay perfect in your behavior, your mindset, your choices. And slowly, life stops feeling natural. It starts feeling heavy, because control is not freedom. It is pressure. It is the constant need to hold everything together. The constant fear that if you let go, everything will fall apart. But the Vedas point to something deeper. They say that control is part of the illusion, because it gives you the feeling of power, while quietly keeping you trapped in the same patterns. You believe you are shaping your life, but most of the time you are just trying to manage what is already happening. That is why, no matter how much control you create, something still feels off. Because control does not bring truth. It only brings temporary order. And that order comes at a cost. You lose your natural flow. You lose your ability to simply experience a moment without trying to adjust it. You lose the quiet sense of ease that comes from not constantly interfering. Instead, everything becomes something to manage. Every thought needs to be corrected. Every emotion needs to be handled. Every situation needs to be controlled. And that creates a silent exhaustion. You may not always notice it, but it is there. A feeling of always needing to stay on top of everything. Always needing to be careful. Always needing to make sure things don't go wrong. But what if the problem is not that you lack control? What if the problem is that you are holding on to it too tightly? The Vedas suggest a different way of seeing. They say clarity does not come from controlling life. It comes from observing it. When you begin to observe instead of control, something shifts. You stop reacting immediately. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop trying to fix everything as it happens. Instead, you allow things to unfold while remaining aware. At first, this feels unfamiliar, can even feel uncomfortable, because you are used to holding everything tightly. But slowly, something begins to change. You notice that not everything needs your interference. You see that thoughts can come and go without you trying to control them. You realize that emotions can rise and fall without needing to be fixed immediately. And in that space, a different kind of strength appears, a quiet strength. Not the strength of control, but the strength of clarity. You are no longer fighting your experience. You are understanding it. And that understanding brings a kind of freedom that control never could. Because now, you are not trapped in the constant need to manage everything. You are present. You are aware. You are steady without forcing yourself to be. And in that state, life begins to feel lighter, not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer holding it so tightly. Control may feel like power, but true power begins the moment you realize you don't need to control everything to see clearly. The moment you truly observe, the illusion cracks. There comes a moment that is not loud, not dramatic, not announced in any clear way, but it changes everything. It is the moment you stop reacting automatically and start observing, not observing in a forced way, not trying to control what you see, but simply noticing quietly without interference. For the first time, you watch your thoughts instead of following them. You notice how they appear, how they move, how they disappear. without you doing anything. You begin to see how quickly a thought tries to pull you in, how it creates a story, how it builds emotion, how it tries to become real in your experience. And instead of getting lost in it, you stay. You watch. The Vedas describe this as a turning point, not because your life suddenly changes on the outside, but because your relationship with your experience begins to shift. Before, you were inside everything. Every thought felt like you. Every emotion felt like you. Every reaction felt like you. There was no distance. But the moment you observe, a small space appears, and that space changes everything. Now, a thought is not immediately you. It is something you can see. An emotion is not something that fully takes over. It is something you can feel. And also watch. This doesn't mean the thoughts stop. It doesn't mean the emotions disappear. It means you are no longer completely absorbed in them. And that is where the illusion begins to crack. The illusion that you are your thoughts. The illusion that every reaction is your true self. The illusion that everything happening inside you must be followed, believed, or controlled. For so long, you were moving inside this illusion without seeing it. You believed what appeared in your mind without question. You reacted without noticing. You followed patterns without awareness. But now, you are watching, and the moment you watch clearly, the illusion cannot stay the same, because illusion depends on unconscious movement. It depends on you not seeing it. The moment light is brought into something that was hidden, it begins to lose its hold. At first, this shift is subtle. You may only notice it for a few seconds at a time. A brief moment where you are aware, where you are not reacting, where you are simply present. Then the mind pulls you back into its patterns. And that's okay, because even that is now being seen. Each time you return to observation, the space becomes clearer. The distance between you and your thoughts becomes more natural. The need to react immediately begins to soften. And slowly, something deeper begins to stabilize. A quiet awareness. A sense of being that is not disturbed by every passing thought or emotion. You are still living your life. You are still moving, speaking, acting. But inside, there is less noise, less confusion, less automatic reaction. Because you are no longer lost inside everything that happens. You are present with it. The Vedas say this is where true clarity begins. Not by changing what appears, but by seeing it for what it is. And the more you remain in this observation, the more the illusion weakens. You begin to see that thoughts are temporary. Emotions are temporary. Patterns are temporary. They come and go. But something in you remains. Something that is always aware. Something that is not caught in the movement. And as that becomes clearer, a deep sense of calm begins to appear. Not because life has become easier, but because you are no longer tangled in everything happening inside you. You are seeing it, and in that seeing, you are free from it. The moment you truly observe, even for a few seconds, the illusion no longer feels solid. It begins to crack, and once it cracks, can never fully close again, because now you know, you are not everything that appears in your mind. You are the one who sees it, and that changes everything. What feels wrong is your life out of alignment, that feeling you've been carrying for so long, the one you couldn't explain, the one that quietly stayed in the background of your life, was never emptiness. It was misalignment, not something missing from your life, but something not fully aligned within it. From the outside, everything may still look the same. Your routine, your responsibilities, your environment, nothing has to be broken for this feeling to exist. Because misalignment is not about what you have. It's about how deeply what you're living matches what is true within you. The Vedas explain that there is a natural harmony in life when awareness, action, and understanding are in alignment. When what you see clearly, what you feel deeply, and how you live all move together. But when that harmony is disturbed, something begins to feel off. Not loudly, not in a way that stops everything, but quietly, consistently, like a soft signal that never fully disappears. You may try to explain it in different ways. You may think you need something more, something new, something better. But no matter what you add or change on the outside, the feeling remains. Because misalignment cannot be fixed externally, cannot be solved by changing your environment, your routine, or even your circumstances. It can only be understood internally. There is a subtle gap between what you are experiencing and what you know deep inside to be true. That gap is not always clear. It doesn't come with words or explanations. It comes as a feeling, a quiet tension, a sense that you are slightly out of place in your own life. The Vedas describe this as living out of sync with your own awareness. You are moving, speaking, acting, but something deeper within you is not fully connected to it. And that creates a silent friction, not strong enough to break your life, but strong enough to make it feel incomplete. First, this can be confusing, because you may look at your life and not find anything obviously wrong. You may even feel guilty for feeling this way. But this feeling is not a sign that your life is failing. It is a sign that your awareness is growing, because only awareness can recognize misalignment. Only awareness can feel the difference between what is surface level and what is deeply true. And once that awareness begins to notice the gap, cannot ignore it. You may try to go back to how things were. You may try to convince yourself that everything is fine. But something inside you has already seen too much. It has already felt the difference. And that is where the shift begins. Instead of trying to fix the feeling, you begin to understand it. You start noticing where your actions don't fully match your inner clarity. You see where your words don't fully reflect what you feel. You recognize where you are following patterns instead of responding with awareness. And slowly, that gap begins to close, not through force, not through sudden change, but through honest observation. The more you see clearly, the more your life naturally begins to align. Your actions become simpler. Your reactions become softer. Your decisions feel less forced, because they are no longer coming from confusion. They are coming from clarity. And in that alignment, something very quiet but very powerful appears. Peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from everything going perfectly, but the kind of peace that comes from not being divided within yourself. You are no longer pulled in different directions. You are no longer trying to be something that doesn't feel true. You are simply moving in a way that feels real. That is why what once felt wrong begins to fade. Because it was never a problem. It was a signal that your life was slightly out of alignment, and that something within you was ready to see it. And the moment you truly begin to see, alignment doesn't need to be forced. It begins to happen on its own, quietly, naturally, in a way that finally feels right. Peace begins the moment you stop pretending. For a long time, you've been holding something together, not in an obvious way, but quietly, constantly. You've been telling yourself that everything is fine. You've been moving through your days with a kind of effort that no one else can see. You've been adjusting, managing, maintaining a version of life that looks right, even when it doesn't fully feel that way. And over time, this becomes normal. You stop noticing the effort. You stop questioning the feeling. You just continue. The Vedas say this is one of the deepest habits of the mind, to pretend stability, even when there is inner conflict, to create a sense of control, even when something inside you feels uncertain. Because pretending feels easier than facing. It allows you to move forward without disruption. But there is a cost. Every time you ignore that quiet feeling, every time you tell yourself this is fine, when something inside you knows it isn't, a small distance is created. A distance between you and what is real. And that distance slowly turns into tension. Not loud tension, not something that breaks your life, but a quiet pressure that never fully leaves. You feel it in moments of silence. You feel it when you're alone. You feel it when there is nothing distracting you. And that's when it becomes clear. You are not tired because of life. You are tired from holding something that doesn't feel true. The Vedas point to a simple but powerful shift. Peace does not begin when everything becomes perfect. Peace begins the moment you stop pretending. The moment you stop forcing yourself to feel okay when you don't. The moment you stop pushing away what you truly feel. The moment you stop trying to maintain an image, even inside your own mind. At first, this can feel uncomfortable, because pretending gave you structure. It gave you a sense of control. Letting go of that feels uncertain. But slowly, something begins to soften. When you stop pretending, you stop fighting. You stop resisting your own experience. You allow things to be as they are without immediately trying to change them. And in that allowance, there is space. Space for clarity. Space for understanding. Space for truth to reveal itself naturally. You begin to sit with your thoughts without reacting to them. You begin to feel your emotions without trying to escape them. You begin to notice what is happening inside you without judgment. And something surprising happens. The tension that once felt so strong begins to loosen. Not because you solved anything, but because you are no longer denying anything. The Vedas explain that truth does not need to be created. It only needs to be seen. And the moment you stop pretending, you allow yourself to see clearly. You see where you've been forcing things. You see where you've been holding on. You see where you've been trying to maintain something that doesn't feel real. And in that seeing, there is release. A quiet, natural release. You don't have to push anything away. You don't have to fix everything at once. You simply stop holding what was never true. And as that happens, peace begins to appear, not as a sudden feeling, not as something dramatic, but as a quiet absence of struggle. A sense that you are no longer divided within yourself. You are no longer acting one way while feeling another. You are no longer carrying something heavy just to keep things looking fine. You are simply here, present, aware, at ease, without trying to be. And in that state, life doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real. Because real does not create tension. Real does not require effort. Real simply is. And the moment you allow yourself to stop pretending, even for a little while, you begin to touch that reality. And in that moment, peace is no longer something you are searching for. It is something you are finally allowing. Now you see it, not all at once, but enough. Enough to feel that something in your life was never fully real. Enough to recognize that the discomfort you carried was never your enemy. It was the signal, a quiet call to wake up. For so long, you tried to fix the outside without realizing the shift had to happen within. You tried to control, to improve, to become, without ever stepping back to truly see. But now something has changed. You're not just listening anymore. You're noticing. You're observing. You're beginning to see the patterns, the identity, the illusion, not as something to fight, but as something to understand. And that changes everything. Because the moment you see clearly, you can never fully go back to unconscious living. You may still move through your routine. You may still play your roles. Life on the outside may look the same, but inside, there is awareness now. A quiet distance from everything that once controlled you. A space where thoughts no longer feel like truth, where emotions no longer define you, where life is no longer something you are trapped in, but something you are aware of. And in that awareness, there is freedom. Not the kind of freedom that comes from escaping life, but the kind that comes from finally seeing it as it is. Simple, clear, unfiltered. This is where everything begins to shift, not through force, not through effort, but through understanding. So don't rush. Don't try to become something new overnight. Just keep seeing, keep noticing, keep allowing that quiet awareness to grow. Because the truth is, you were never lost. You were only looking through a lens that wasn't real. And now that you're starting to see clearly, life is no longer something you have to figure out. It becomes something you finally experience. And in that experience, in that quiet, steady awareness, you don't just live life anymore, you understand it. And that is where real peace begins.